The European Union has announced a €1.6 billion financial package for infrastructure in the Palestinian Territories, including Gaza. Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammad Mustafa travelled to Luxembourg for talks hosted by the EU's top diplomat Kaja Kallas. The meeting was aimed at discussing solutions for Gaza, which the EU wants the Palestinian Authority to govern after the war. The funding to be paid to the authority over 3 years is conditional on EU demands for democratic reforms. Well, our correspondent Teri Schultz is following these developments. Welcome, Teri. So what does the EU want to see this money spent on?
This money, the $1.6 billion you mentioned over the next 3 years, will be split in 3 ways, Phil. About $600 million of it will go directly to the Palestinian Authority, what's recognized as the legitimate government of the Palestinian people, to support it and, key, to reform it. That's really important here. About another $600 million would go to what's being called recovery and resilience in the West Bank and Gaza, much of which, of course, is completely destroyed, and this would also cover some humanitarian aid. And then there's about another $400 million that would be available in loans from the European Investment Bank, and that would go to Palestinian Authority institutions to help build them back up. But we really have to emphasize, as you did before, that reforming the Palestinian Authority is key to this money going forward, to the relationship strengthening, because there have been allegations of corruption. And this is something that Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammad Mustafa was very much made aware of today in his meetings with EU high officials here in Brussels. This was the first ever EU-Palestinian high-level dialogue, so there's a lot riding on it.
And so how will they make sure that none of these millions end up in Hamas coffers?
I think that's a very difficult guarantee to make, but certainly the calculation on both sides is that by strengthening the Palestinian Authority, which is recognized as the only legitimate government of the Palestinian people, you would show that this prime minister comes home with more than €1.5 billion over the next 3 years. You show that this is the partner that EU countries want to have. And in that way, certainly they're hoping that the Palestinian people turn away from Hamas, which is a recognized terrorist organization, which has brought so much destruction on them. That's certainly the way that both sides here want to move forward.
OK, stay with us, Teri. We're going to hear from the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, who has been very critical of Israel's actions in the Palestinian territories. We'll hear from her and then come back to you.
Let me again express our solidarity with the Palestinian people at the appalling loss of life and destruction in Gaza. We condemn the total blockade of aid into Gaza, and Israel must fully reinstate humanitarian aid. In the West Bank, we are very concerned about the worsening situation. This includes the displacement of tens of thousands of people, as well as the restricted access to essential services such as healthcare and education.
So very direct criticism of Israel there from Kaja Kallas. Teri Schultz in Brussels. Is that criticism shared by all 27 EU governments?
Certainly it's shared by some of them. There are many, including Kaja Kallas herself, who have expressed that Israel's response has been disproportionate, that it has been too destructive on civilians in the Palestinian territories. But there are other countries who believe, of course, that Hamas is fully to blame. And Kaja Kallas herself talked about disagreements that happened at this meeting here today, where some countries want to put sanctions on extremist Israeli settlers for what they've done against Palestinian civilians, but she said they couldn't find unanimity on that. Meanwhile, Hamas is heavily sanctioned, Hamas individuals. So that remains a disagreement. Also, fewer than a dozen EU member countries have recognized Palestine as a state. But this is something, again, that may be changing. For example, French President Emmanuel Macron has come out and said that he expects France will recognize a Palestinian state at a big UN conference in New York in June. So this could be a turning point. But again, going back to what we spoke about at the beginning, this goes along with the Palestinian Authority showing that it can be a trusted partner and really regaining legitimacy, not just in the eyes of the Palestinians, Palestinian people, but also in its international partners around the world. But things could be changing for the better when it comes to governance of the Palestinian territories.
Okay, thanks for that, Teri. Teri Schultz in Brussels.